Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Bobby. I have a lesson for you today that, if taken to heart, can be incredibly impactful on your golf game, as well as the enjoyment that you derive from playing the game, and can also help you deal with the natural ups and downs that the game presents. In addition to that, I have a very inspirational story. It's a story that everybody should know, and it does a lot to back up the lesson that I'm trying to put forth today. Now, as a thought experiment to lay the groundwork for today's lesson, I want you to take a piece of paper and draw a line right down the center of it. On this top left-hand corner, write the words, "did finish his swing in perfect balance." And in the right hand at the top, write the words, "did not finish his swing in perfect balance." And then take that piece of paper along with a pen over to the couch and watch a 2-hour golf broadcast. Watch the best players in the world on the PGA Tour. And every single time you see a player who finishes in perfect balance, put a check mark on that left-hand column. And when you see that they do not, put a check mark on that right-hand column. Now, that left-hand column is going to get populated in a hurry. You're going to have to probably go get more paper because you're going to run out of space. That right-hand column is going to have far fewer check marks. And then usually it's going to be when someone's on the side of a hill and they're making a swing and they get a little out of balance, or hitting from underneath a tree, or Scotty Scheffler going after a big drive with that wild footwork that he has sometimes. But even with Scotty, you're going to find that most of the time when he approach shot into a green, he's in perfect balance as well. In fact, 95% of the players on 95% of their swings, it will be found swing in perfect balance. Now, this is unfortunately not interesting to a lot of people, because balance is something you observe after the ball is gone. And once the work has been done and the ball has been struck, most people don't care a darn thing about how they look. But if you can sort of reverse engineer a golf swing, you start to realize that the glue that holds this swing together is the commitment the golfer has to finishing full and balanced each and every time. Because if the top of the backswing is consistent and the final moment of the swing is consistent, every intervallic event in the golf swing will be consistent as well. Now, let me tell you this story. Back in 2000, 2001, and 2002, I was the director of golf instruction at Eagle Ridge, a 63-hole facility in Galena, Illinois. And I was running the Golf Academy. And I had working for me at the time a gentleman by the name of Richie Carl. Now, this should be a household name, but it's not. Richie had worked in his previous life in 1974 at the golf club in Endicott, New York, where they played the BC Open. Now, he had tried to play on tour and had gotten in some events, but he was most often cut. He just couldn't hold up. Well, he got into the tour event that was being held at his golf course. After 3 days, he was 1 stroke out of the lead. Now, you got to understand, this is a club pro, and this is his golf course where this tour event is being played. His members are lining every fairway. With each round that he continues to do well, after the first day he shot 70, then he shot 67, the newspapers are calling, everybody's wanting to know the members it's just like watching Tiger. This golf course is lined with people he knows, and he is right in the middle of the spotlight. Now, when that happens to a person who's not used to being in the spotlight, in fact has failed in all of so many of his other attempts to try to do something like this, it's easy to believe, if you've watched golf at all, that he's probably going to fold on Sunday. And in fact, usually the way that goes is someone who's really not supposed to be there but is on Sunday, well, he'll double bogey 2 of the first 6 holes and shoot himself completely out of it. And so far out of it that he can then relax, because then on the back 9 he might shoot 1 under, but having shot himself out early, finish in 10th place or something like that. And that's what most people are expecting to happen to Richie. But then one of the other golf professionals with whom he worked came up to him, approached him on Sunday morning and said, "Listen, Richie, I got to talk to you about a couple things. Number one, I am terribly sorry about what happened out there on the fairways with our members the day before." See, on Saturday, the horror struck. All the members, one member in particular, decided it was okay to go over there and engage with Richie while he's trying to play in a PGA Tour event. They said, "Hey, Richie, I want you to meet my friends." Now, he's outside the ropes talking to Richie, who's inside the ropes. And when one member saw that member get away with it, he decided to do the same thing. Everybody was doing that to him, talking to him like he's at work. He's trying to play in a tournament. So this other pro is apologizing, saying, "Man, I tried to stop those people from doing that, and I just couldn't get to them quick enough. And it just turned in 1, turned into 2, turned into 5, turned into 10. It was just awful." However, I put together a calling committee last night, and there was 12 of us, and we called every single member in the directory, and we told them, "Do not engage." So today, you don't have to worry about it. You can lift your gaze. You don't have to hide your eyes. No one's going to try to strike up a conversation with you. They know it's okay to root for you, but they know it's not okay to try to speak to you on a personal level. That's number one. Number two, Richie, I've been watching you for 54 holes, and I've never been so inspired. The manner in which you're swinging all the way to a balanced finish on every single shot reminds me of exactly how you play when we go out and play. This has been enough to keep you somewhere in the hunt. You're one shot out. Now, I don't know if it's enough, but if you will just spend these final 18 holes today doing just that, playing your own game, not trying to out-hit Bruce Crampton because that's who he's going to be paired with, not trying to do anything, but do exactly what you've been doing. It may not be enough, but it'll be enough for you to not be ashamed of yourself. It'll be enough for you to hold your head high, and it'll be enough for you to know at least you didn't beat yourself. And I've got to tell you, I think it also represents your best chance to do well in this tournament. Stick to doing nothing but holding your perfectly balanced finish on every single shot. Stay above your feet, and I think that's your best chance. Well, it turned out that that was enough to get him into a playoff with Bruce Crampton. And Richie Carl then birdied the first playoff hole to be the last club pro ever to win a PGA Tour event. He won the 1974 BC Open. Now, as you might imagine, this changed his life. You know, he got to play in the Masters. He won, $30,000 for this. He and his wife went down to High Point, North Carolina, and bought some furniture for their house. They're loving it, but he said the biggest thing that he got from this, what he derived that was most impactful from this, is that he didn't have to choke, and that he has never choked since that day, and says he will never choke again because he understands what the formula is for a choke. Choking is just simply focusing so much, caring so much about the results of the shot that you can't calm your mind enough to relax. And so when he took his focus off the results and put it just on himself, and his only responsibility being just hold your finish, then that was enough for him to simply never choke again. He couldn't, because choking involves caring too much. He said, I'm only going to care about that which I can control. Now, he never won again. He won a couple of state opens and had a little bit of success, but never won on tour again. But the bigger issue is he says he never beat himself again. Many times he's had to say, you know what, I played great today, but you played even better, congratulations. So it's not always enough to win, but it's enough for the individual to get all they can out of their round on any given day, and it's a lesson for every single one of us. Now, what are the features of a well-balanced, relaxed swing? Well, you've got to, if you haven't had it before, and you haven't focused on it before, you're going to have to learn what a relaxed finish is to your swing and how to achieve it. I want to go over the 3 points to this that you can be mindful of and that will make a big difference in a hurry. Number one, you've got to first figure out what the role of your two big toes are in your balance and in your mobility. Now, we've heard all the time, stay on your toes, be athletic, and that's true. If you're performing some sort of athletic endeavor where you're moving from the spot where you are to some other place. In golf, the golf swing, you're not doing that. So if I'm going to sprint this way or that way, I do need my two big toes. They're going to grab the ground and help propel me forward. If I'm going to jump somewhere, in other words, move from this spot to somewhere else, I need my big toes. But if you're performing something stationary, like a golf swing, or like a barbell squat, for instance, you certainly don't want to get on your toes when you have a weight on your back. If it's a stationary movement, then you want to stay off your toes, because we have what's called proprioception, and that is our body's way of saying, hey, look, you're falling, you better brace for this. Anytime, if someone pushed me from behind and my two big toes grabbed the ground, that would send a jolt through my system. I would sense that I was falling, and I would lock up on guard against falling. That's in a stationary movement. Anytime our two big toes are grabbing, that's a way of our body saying, hey, you're out of balance, you're falling, and you go on lockdown mode. And so what happens in a person's golf swing, if they on the downswing swing specifically to the left toe, as soon as you get to that left toe, your body senses it's falling, and you go on lockdown mode, and the hips will never rotate. You'll never finish your hip rotation. You can only finish your hip rotation if you get your weight to the back of the heel. Now, a lot of people go, oh, that can't be right. Athletic people are on their toes. Yes, they're athletic in sports where they're going somewhere. In golf, it's a stationary movement. You don't want to be on your toes because your body thinks you're falling. You're out of balance if your weight is on your left big toe. And so the very first thing you got to do is you've got to see if you can even hit a chip shot without going to your toe. Now, so many people will do that, and what they just think they're bad at chipping. In reality, their body's on lockdown as soon as they get to that ball because they've gone to their toe. You've got to get over to your heel. All right, now that was about a 40-yard shot, but we're gonna start with something short like that. Get the weight to the heel. Once you can do that with something approaching uniformity, then start building the swing a little bit. Once you get to 50 or 60 yards, it's time to add the second piece of balance that can be worked on, and that is the role of the right hip and right leg. Once you get to this left heel, you want to be able to take this right hip, get through the shot, and allow this leg to come into a hanging, toppled position. In other words, if it's got muscular tension and it's going to be out here, the hip will not have turned. That's not relaxation. This is. So I need to, number one, be on my left heel, above my feet, not leaning on over the cliff, but above my feet, and let this leg should demonstrate relaxation in the way it hangs and just topples right next to the other standing foot. Start with short shots. Hit them 20 yards, then 30 yards, then 40 yards, then 50 yards, all the while making sure you get to your left heel and that the right leg simply topples. There's no muscular tension in there. After you get to 15, 16, 70 yards, what do? We start adding the attention we pay to our shoulders. Now you might swing all the way around yourself, but your shoulders should always be dropped. All right, even if the hands are high, the shoulders are down. You never want to look like this. That's muscular tension. That's someone who's screaming uncertainty. And so what we want to do is always get to our left heel. We always want to feel like our right leg is relaxed and dropped right next to the other one, and that our shoulders are down. Once you can do that at 50, 60, and 70 yards, all three of those checkpoints, well, then it's time to go over and hit an 8-iron. Full steam ahead, making sure that this right hip gets at least as far over as the left hip, and that you're in perfect balance at the finish. Once you can do that with an 8-iron, grab your 7-iron and your 5-iron and your hybrid, and then finally your driver. If you will make it your unfailing habit to get all the way to a balanced finish for each and every swing, you will be amazed at the impact that that has on your ability to score and your ability to deal with pressure. It's worth whatever time it takes to develop. I have only one more Richie Carl story, and this is one that from which I derive just as much inspiration as the BC Open and the 74 story. I wasn't there for it in 74, but I got to see this one. This was in 02. I decided to arrange a match play championship between myself and all the other pros. There's 12 of us. And one kid was an assistant pro. He's like 24 years old. He just graduated the year before from the University of Tennessee, where he was the #1 player on their golf team. He had a stroke average the year before of like 71.2 or something like that. I mean, the guy could play. And he's young, and he's just got off 4 years of competing. He's going to be hard to beat in this match play championship. I knew that. But he said to me, this kid, he had the audacity to say, you know, I believe this match play championship is really just going to be a 2-horse race. And I went, oh yeah? I guess you're one of the horses. Who's the other horse? He says, Dale. Dale's a great player. In other words, he wasn't afraid of Richie at all. Richie's playing in this thing. And he's thinking it's a foregone conclusion that he and Dale are going to be in the championship. Then I said, yeah, who are you playing in the first round? He said, I got Richie Carl. I went, oh, you do? You probably just trounce right on him, right? Oh, he says he's 55 years old. I mean, come on. I'm sure, I know he used to be a good player, but that's what he said. Now, I happen to know a little bit about the psychology involved in someone walking into something overconfident, only to find that that person that they're sure they're going to beat has come ready to fight, and how that can have a dampening effect on somebody's spirit in a hurry, how that mental edge can turn over. In fact, oftentimes this underdog doesn't have to elevate himself to this person will come back down to them. And so I said, all right, I showed up to watch them play, and on the first hole, this kid outdrove Richie by 75 yards. And this kid drove all the way to his ball, 75 yards ahead of Richie, and looked back at Richie as if to say, I'm going to drum you. I'll be up here waiting for you. Well, Richie hit a 5-iron on the green. This kid hit a pitching wedge on the green, and they both walked away with par. But here's what happened. Richie went something like this: par, 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 birdie. Par, 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 birdie. Always holding his balance, always looking relaxed and calm. Par, 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 birdie, and shut the kid out on 16. He was 3 up with 2 to go on 16 green. He beat him. Now, I've got to tell you, I was thrilled to death, because I got to see in person what I didn't get to see in 1974. And that is how someone can overcome the odds by just committing to themselves and not worrying about what the other guy's doing, taking care of that which they can handle and doing it effectively. And it's a good lesson for every one of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in. I look forward